In the 1800s, the journey to Blount Springs, the preeminent resort of its time, was usually by train. The scenic trip from Birmingham took about an hour. Once at Blount Springs, people arrived at the depot across the street from the new Jackson House. The Mountain House stood near the new Jackson House on the hill behind it. People were amazed at the resort and the beauty of the area. 3 stories tall, grand and beautiful, the hotel was one of the finest in the Southeast. With a ballroom, offices, and a kitchen, the resort offered its guests everything they needed. The food was excellent, and the service was outstanding. The official opening of the new Jackson House in 1878 was a grand affair, with a grand ball and a who's who of the celebrities and politicians of the time.
In the picture, the hotel staff in front of the hotel, the lady in the middle in the front row that has on the white dress, was Luella. And I think Luella worked in the kitchen at the hotel. She was a great cook. And Luella was married to John Perkins, who worked with Plug Muckham in the bathhouse. And where they gave the mud baths and the red sulfur baths. And during the time that I was a child and lived in Blount Springs, Luella worked for my mother. And her son, Babe Perkins, lived with her. And Luella did ironing and helped Mom and gave us a lot of old-time remedies when any of us would get sick. She really helped Mom out that way. Luella was a very nice, very friendly and sweet person.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Jackson House, one of the hotels here in this area. And today, if you go out there, you can see the hotel burned, and you can see some of the beautiful glass that the fixtures they had, and all the and one thing, my background is in landscaping. They actually brought a person down, I believe from New York, that did the landscaping. And even today, all these years later, there's still nandinas and different types of flowers growing there. But if you go up the side of the mountain, there's a trail still there where he landscaped the side of the mountain and made a path going from one hotel to the other. And the rocks are fixed just so. So at one time, we don't have any pictures of that, of course, but you can see by looking where the trees are growing and so forth that it was really landscaped more so than some of the botanical gardens that you see around different places. So he did an excellent job of landscaping, and they used the rocks to make little rock walls up and around so people could walk around and enjoy the different flowers, and there are some still daffodils and things like that are still growing there from way back when. But they would walk around and enjoy these different types of botanical garden type things, the botany of the area. One of the more famous people that visited Blount Springs was Miss Lillian Russell, and they weren't expecting her to come there, so she just came unannounced, and they didn't have room for her in the hotel, and they had to put her up in one of the boarding houses. And while she's here, she decided to go sun by the creek, and what she didn't realize, there were a lot of chiggers down by the creek, and those that know what I'm talking about call them red bugs and so forth, but they are very painful and make you itch and make real big large bumps on you. Anyway, what they decided to do is put butter all over her, and they used up all the butter in the hotel to kind of get her where she could stop itching because she had so many chigger bites on her.
This is the side of the old mountaintop hotel. It burned in 1915. It was caught from the Jackson House below it in the big fire in 1915.
In this topographical map of the early 1900s, Alabama Highway 7 runs very differently than it does today. The highway ran to the right of the springs, made a hard left-hand turn, and continued into Stagecoach Road and into present-day Highway 31. The remains of this road can still be seen today. The spring yard was well maintained and very beautiful. There was a pavilion, and in later times, a bowling alley was at the bottom of the spring yard. There were 7 springs at one time, 5 at the yard and 2 at the top of the hill. Many Blount Springs residents and the hotel had running water from these springs. The pipes can still be seen today.
This is the spout spring that is above the spring yard. It's freestone water, and it was, my daddy put a tank in up here in the late 40s and early 50s and put a new pipe in down to our store. The pipe goes under a tunnel under 31, but the sound that you hear is the water still running from the spout spring.
This old Blount Springs water system.
This is the
Waterworks.
the Blount Springs water system in the 40s and 50s. Various people got water from here.
One area attraction was an oddly shaped rock that appeared to pivot on the ground. Pivot Rock. It was about half a mile from the hotel and very close to the spring yard. Everyone from couples to families visited Pivot Rock, the most popular attraction in the area at the time. Blount Springs' most popular and well-known resident at the time was Mary Gordon Duffy. Mrs. Duffy was an author and was a very spirited woman. People would go to her house on Duffy's Mountain to visit. She would entertain them with stories and ideas and her musings on life. She was a very popular woman who sometimes would refuse to see people she did not like.
I can remember one of the things, always we'd heard about Molly Duffy, or Mary Gordon Duffy. In Blount Springs, we knew her as Molly Duffy. And I had always heard as a child that she was ambidextrous, that she could write with both hands. And that was about the only memory I had of her as a child. There was this black couple that took care of Molly. They didn't live with her, but they lived in the area, and they used to take food to her and took care of her in her latter years. And Isaac used to come down the mountain by the quarry, cross the foot log, and he always had some kind of package with him. Now, Mary Gordon Duffy, as I'd said a little earlier, didn't like being called a hermit. That's the only time that I've read in her writings that she responded to what people were calling her. But really, in that era, I guess she was called a free spirit. She did what she needed to do, and without worrying about what people would say about her. They called her a witch, they called her a hermit, they called her a crabby old lady, and but Mary Gordon Duffy had many travels. She went many places, and most of her uniqueness was that she liked to do what she wanted to do.
Mary Gordon Duffy was different in some ways. Very intelligent, but she didn't let the style of the clothes at that time bother her. She wore old pants and maybe some type of cap or some type of scarf over her head, and it didn't bother what she wore. I mean, boots. If you probably saw her walking in the woods, you might think she was looked like she was dressed as a man, but it didn't bother her. Now, she was about 6 feet tall, and at that time, the average man was not that tall. So when you see her walking around, you think, well, she's not a very smart person, but she's a kind of free-spirited person and wanted to do the things that she wanted to do and the way she wanted to do it. Now, she would ride a horse down from Duffy's Mountain down to check the mail, I think just about every day when the train came through, and see if she had anything to send out, the correspondence on the mail train or anything like that, and sometimes to visit, sometimes just to see what was going on down on this side of the mountain. I have a kind of a funny story that when I first came up here in the 60s that people told me about Mary Gordon Duffy is that when she passed away, they had a wake for her. Back then, people would stay up all night with the body until they could bury him the next day, or maybe they'd stay up 2 nights with them until they could actually bury the body. And back then, they had no way of preserving the body. And I know in some cases where they had ice, they would keep ice on the body and didn't have embalming fluid and that type of thing. So what they did is just put a sheet over, and the people were sitting around talking like they usually did at wakes. And all of a sudden, they saw movement under the sheet, and they thought, well, she's not dead. And so they all jumped up and ran out of the house, and they got thinking about what happened, and one of them was brave enough to walk back in, and her pet cat had gotten under the sheet and was walking around under the sheet, so they thought it was her moving rather than the cat.
In the 1940s and 50s, I grew up in Blount Springs and my parents owned a grocery store. And up behind the store is the rock quarry. At that time, there was no activity up there, and we used to go up to the quarry and find fossils. And we used to go to the pivot rock, and some of the kids would climb up on it. I never did. But they said there was a moccasin print on top of it. Now, I don't know if they saw something similar or not. And we used to go to waterfalls. My daddy bought a season ticket for us kids, $7. We could swim all summer. And at waterfalls, they had the creek that came down through there, or the cold spring, I think they called it, that came from a cave. And boy, that water was cold. It was like ice water. And Mr. Cook built a swimming pool to the side of it. And we would swim in the cold water for a little while and then jump out and go get in the pool and get warm. And to the back of the creek and the pool was I guess it was just a little where they had some standing water or a spring or something. Every year, usually around Labor Day, they had the coon on the log. The men that had coon dogs brought their dogs, and they had a coon that sat on the log, and the dogs went out, and if they could knock the coon off the log, they won some jazz dog food. Now, that was a lot of fun for the adults and the hunters, but it wasn't much fun for us children. And the waterfalls now has been dammed up higher, and it's known as the Blue Hole, where Blount Springs Village is now.
Over the decades, like any town, Blount Springs changed. Where the train once ran bringing guests to the resort, Highway 31 is now in its place. The hotels are gone forever, burned down in 1915. Mary Gordon Duffy now rests on Duffy's Mountain. The springs are no longer a showpiece with manicured lawns and pavilions. Instead, they run quietly without fanfare, reclaimed by nature. Pivot Rock still stands tall. A hint of the former grandeur remains through the village at Blount Springs. This beautiful gated community gives a nod to the former grandeur of the historic resort that no longer remains.